Welcome to the B-Side Book Reviews. And today we're going to look at the classic novel Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Who wrote this book when she was barely in her 30s. I just hope she looked better in real life than her picture on Wikipedia. I actually have watched several movie versions in VHS, mind you, as it should be watched. I have no idea what that meant. But anyway, grab some coffee and let's take a look at Jane Eyre. Here we have the story of forbidden love, or something like that. How about crazy love? Well, our story begins with poor little orphan Jane Eyre living a tormented life at the hands of her evil aunt and snobby cousins. Fortunately, she escapes this awful life, but lands in an even more tormented life at the hands of some crazy guy who runs the poorhouse orphanage. Well, here, our Jane learns humility, along with starvation, diphtheria, and how to deal with even more evil, crazy people. Yes, for an added bonus though, she picks up a little French, a little piano playing, well, enough to where she decides to hire herself out as a governess to any rich family who wants to hire her, as long as she doesn't have to deal with teenagers. This is mainly because she's a teenager herself. Well, this leads her to the fine estate of Thornfield Hall, which sounds a bit like a girl's dorm at some Ivy League school. Okay, here our Jane meets her new pupil, who is an excitable little French girl who is bubbly with excitement. However, someone else is bubbly with excitement as well, because there's some creepy after going on in the middle of the night throughout the old mansion. Apparently, someone is staying up late watching Comedy Central. But Jane is a bit freaked out by it all. Yes, indeed. However, her mind drifts on to other things as the master of the house returns. Indeed, Edward Rochester has it all. Well, he has money in the state anyway. Yes. Physically, he doesn't do much for our teenage governess. But Edward talks with so much sophisticated gibberish that he launches Jane into such a state of confusion that the poor lass falls for him. Of course, Edward has his pick of all the single gold diggers in English society. But he develops a thing for the young governess. Indeed. After all, she's 18, and most of the women during that time were pushing middle age around 25. So, he figured he'd best strike while he can. And of course, the thought of fooling around with the governess does have that certain porn movie vibe to it. Needless to say, he falls for her, and wedding bells are ringing. Well, they are until Edward's brother-in-law shows up and tells of Edward's present wife living in the house. Yeah, well, that tends to put a damper on any wedding. So, we learn that Edward does have a wife, and she's mad about him. Actually, she's gone freaking crazy. So crazy that he has her stashed up in the mansion's attic. which also has a bit of a porn movie vibe to it as well, now that I think about it. Apparently, the wife has listened to Madonna's song Crazy for You a bit too often, and took it a bit too literally. Oh, poor Jane. Now, she's in love with a rich dude who has a crazy wife. I see a reality show in the making here. While reading this book, I almost got the impression that Charlotte Bronte wasn't going to let her little sister Emily get the upper hand on literary creepiness and darkness. Now, Emily put out Wuthering Heights in 1847, so I'm guessing that Sister Charlotte said, "Oh yeah? I can get even creepier than you. I'll make up some story about a guy who keeps his crazy wife locked up in the attic. That will beat your nasty old Heathcliff and his ghost girlfriend, yeah!" Therefore, she released Jane Eyre in 1848. Even though the book was written back in the days of jolly old England, the writing style here is anything but jolly. The book contains 183,349 words, and I dare say that at least 83,000 of them could have been left out, and the book would have not only flowed better, but it would have been easier and more enjoyable to read. Indeed, Charlotte tends to get a bit wordy here. Now, there were a few times I just wanted to scream out, "Good gosh, Charlotte, we get the friggin' point!" Of course, poor Charlotte left us at the tender age of 38 in 1855, so my comments wouldn't have mattered much. Now, I almost wonder if I would have gotten the entire meaning of the book if I hadn't watched the movie. Oh, indeed. 5 versions of the movie, in fact. 5 different Jane Eyres, 5 different Edward Rochesters, and 5 different crazy wives. Let's just say I knew the story pretty well before I even opened the book. I dare say if I had read the book first and then seen one of the 5 movies, I'd probably go, "Oh, so that's what this story was all about. Oh, so many characters. We start out with Jane's absolute deplorable bitch of an aunt, Miss Reed, and her 3 screwy kids. When we learn that Jane's spoiled little cousin John winds up committing suicide and his sister becomes a nun, I just wanted to say, good riddance! And I really wish Charlotte would have let us in on what became of the evil taskmaster of the Lowood orphanage. This, of course, would be Mr. Brocklesworth. Brocklehurst. Brocklesworth? Which sounds like something you add cheese to and put in a sandwich. Now, he was so evil that I wanted to scream out, "Yes, you! And the horse you rode in on!" Now, Jane Eyre herself is a bit of a bore, especially for an 18-year-old. We certainly get no girl gone wild vibe here. Now, the book keeps telling us how completely plain and ordinary she is. But she must have had something going on for her because she gets 2 marriage proposals in our story. The first, of course, comes from Mr. Rochester, and the other from her cousin and local parson, St. John Rivers. Johnny Rivers. Didn't he sing the song, Secret Agent Man? Actually, this guy was the incurable bore, whose remarks regarding Jane were simply, she has a peculiar face, fleshless and haggard as it is. I rather like it. And when in good health and animated, I can fancy her physiognomy would be most agreeable. Wow. Now that's a way to charm the ladies, dude. Physiognomy? Seriously? Strangely enough, when they find out that they are cousins, Jane is delighted and starts calling him brother. Okay, this gets a little creepy, because St. John sees her as a wife material and proposes. I'm guessing he wanted Jane to be his little mama. Yes, things were a bit different back in those days. I just thought it was weird that Jane had 2 cousins named John. Then there was Mr. Edward Rochester, the master of Thornfield. He was some rich guy who inherited everything he had and basically spent his life carousing Europe and apparently fooling around with the occasional French ballet dancer. He did have some pretty adverse ways of speaking, though. Oh, indeed. The guy couldn't just say something simple. Oh my gosh. No. He had to break out into some long verse that was filled with so much symbolic crap that reading this book nearly drove me insane. At one point, he mentions that he talks like a sphinx. Do sphinx talk? Now I'm getting the feeling that his wife Bertha was completely normal when Rochester met her. But after listening to his senseless ramblings, the woman was driven completely mad. No doubt, after Jane Eyre finally married the guy, he probably drove her insane as well. After locking Jane up in his attic, Rochester promptly made the comment, "Wow, I sure do pick the crazy ones. Or maybe it's me." Now, as for the crazy wife Bertha, she was far and above my favorite character. Indeed, who doesn't want some crazy broad roaming the hallways at night, laughing like she's in Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, filling their stories? Now, after a little internet literary study, I found out that the crazy Bertha was from Jamaica, and she was of some mixed race, described as a large woman with dark features. Okay, now in our book, her insanity is described as hereditary. Crazy wife, crazy mother-in-law, crazy grandmother-in-law. However, there was some belief that because of her mixed race, the woman was destined to go insane. Really? Who would have thought that Charlotte Bronte was such a racist? This book is what we literary folks call buildergism. Buildergism. So what does that mean? I haven't a clue. Oh, but doesn't it sound all artsy-fartsy and intellectual? Probably not, because I think I mispronounced it. To tell the truth, I already knew the story. So I kind of put myself on autopilot through a lot of this book. Thank God for that, because if I didn't, this book would have taken me forever to read. I was just so enchanted with the idea of keeping the crazy wife locked up in the attic while flirting with the 18-year-old governess. Ooh, yeah, let's ponder that thought for a while. Enjoyment? Ooh, I'll say. I am a bit confused, though, regarding the pair of scissors on the book's cover. Oh, who cares about the cover? Let's concentrate more on the crazy wife locked up in the attic and flirting with the teenage governess. Originally, this novel was published in 3 volumes. I guess it was a bit like the Hunger Games series of books. No doubt, all the frantic readers of the mid-1800s sat on the edge of their settees, anticipating the next volume, like high school kids looking forward to the next Harry Potter book. Makes me wonder, though, if they were making movies back then, would there have been 3 movies made from this book? Or make 2 movies out of the last book, like the Hunger Games series? Instead, they made 1 movie. Gee, what were they thinking? And that was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. If you don't want to read the book, there are movies. A lot of movies. Silent films, sound films, radio, television, theater. Oh dear. What would little Charlotte say about that? As for me, being a literary snob, I'll say read the book.